You should be able to share now.
Okay. Please confirm, can you see? Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And please also, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this day, for sharing part of the Saturday with us. From wherever you are around the world, thank you for joining. Also, thank you to the organizers, the Emerging Career Academy, for extending this invitation to me to come share my thoughts on how to fund your postgraduate degree program in the United States. And also thank you to all our facilitators who have spoken. Very insightful presentations. So I'll be speaking on funding your graduate degree program in the United States. We've all heard from our previous facilitators, Destiny, and every other person. Well, you want to put your best foot forward, right? As you're applying to the best schools around the world, you're applying to Harvard, you're applying to Oxford, to Cambridge, to Columbia, and the rest of them. It's all good. Through your personal statement, through your statement of purpose or intent, or whatever it's called, right? You want to put out your best, blow your trumpet, and get admitted. But here's the flip side. You get admitted, but you don't have the money to fund the program, or you don't have the money. There's no viable means to fund the program. And let me take you back to 2020, right? So I got my admission to Columbia Law School for the LLM program in February 2020. That was the onset of COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah, I was so elated, very happy, like everyone would in my situation. But the fees was quite expensive, ridiculously expensive, right? Tuition fee, this was in 2020, I was looking for about $80,000 US in February 2020. And we all know what's happening with the Naira. Every day, sadly, Naira keeps on depreciating. So then, apart from the onset of COVID, I didn't have any viable means of funding the LLM program. It didn't make any sense to me. I had Columbia, but more or less zero funding from the school or external partners, right? If I should use all my savings, all my life savings, I wouldn't be able to still afford the program. $80,000 US, then I think we're looking towards 36 to 40 million Naira for an LLM program for 9 months. So yeah, funding is very important. So as you're applying to the schools, you're shortlisting and considering the schools you want to apply to. It's also good and also equally important to also look at the funding opportunities that these schools offer and also external funding bodies as well. So you don't just get the funding and you're left out to dry because you don't have viable means of funding like was my case in 2020. We all know the popular saying that soup way sweet, na money kill 'em. So money is very key. There's no doubt or debate about that. So yeah, I believe this session is going to be very, very important. I want to share my thoughts based on my experiences and also insights and discussions with friends and colleagues over the years who have applied to schools in the United States. Well, my presentation really is kind of limited based on my own background. I'm a lawyer, I'm a legal practitioner, and I'm currently undertaking the LLM program at Columbia Law School. And also most of the people I have in my network have also applied to postgraduate degree programs in the US are legal practitioners as well. So the greater part of my presentation will be focused on legal practitioners who want to pursue an advanced degree in the United States. So you've gotten your admission or while applying to schools for your postgraduate degree in the States, right? There are two major sources of funding. Two major sources of funding in the United States. First, you have grants and scholarship. Then second, you have loan. Grants and scholarship to one hand, and the other, you have the loan. So quickly, I'll run through each, but grants and scholarships, the funding bodies that are available for postgraduate degree programs in the States, loans as well, which agencies give loans to international students for graduate degree programs in the States. And also I'll provide some resources which I believe will be helpful to all of us as we consider applying to for our graduate degree programs in the States. So the first is grants and scholarships. And I divided it into two parts. First, by the host academic institution, right? So you're considering applying to, let's say, to Harvard, to Columbia, to New York University, or whichever university you want to apply to here in the States, right? Most institutions, I believe virtually all of them, well, yeah, with very few exceptions, most of these institutions offer institutional grants or institutional funding. So when you hear the word grant or scholarship, I believe it's self-explanatory. It's they're given a form of like a gift, and it shouldn't be repaid, right? And for most scholarships, right, most schools, the basis for giving you the funding are two legs. One is merit-based, so merit-based or based on your academic qualification, based on your leadership abilities in the past, or what's it called, or your promise. You have any promising project or promising professional trajectory, right? So most institutions give scholarships based on merit. Those are merit-based scholarships. And you also have scholarships that are need-based, financial, based on your financial need. Yeah, you have to more or less show the institution your current financial situation and why you are in need of the funding as opposed to the other applicants. While some schools also do a combination of both. For some scholarships, they'll also consider your merit based on your academics or professional trajectory and also financial needs. So as I said, these scholarships, right, most of them are being administered or being sponsored by the schools. I'm sure as you've heard from the previous speakers, most of these internationally renowned institutions, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, they have significant endowments in billions of dollars or pounds or euros. Yeah, so you want to tap into that endowment, right? And another set of scholarship that's also administered by these schools are externally funded scholarships. So let's say an alumnus of Columbia who has finished from Columbia many years ago, and now decides, oh, I want to institute this scholarship, or Afam Ikeakanam scholarship for students or applicants from sub-Saharan Africa, right? So these institutions that you're considering all have scholarships. One, that they administer, or two, that they administer on behalf of external bodies. So let's give you a few examples, right? So you can see here the second point, Columbia Law School, which I applied to. For instance, you have the Human Rights Fellowship, which is for those with human rights experience. The Appel Fellowship is also an internal funding by Columbia Law School. Is for those that have experience or interest in the global regulation of companies. You have the CPRL Lehman Scholar Award, 3 Crowns. I'm sure 3 Crowns is a big international law firm that focuses on arbitration. So the 3 Crowns Scholarship focuses or gives preference to those who have interest or experience in international arbitration. Then you have the Baker McKenzie Endowed Scholarship, and you also have the Judith R. and Michael E. Toya Scholarship. This scholarship focuses really focuses only on applicants from sub-Saharan Africa, of which we belong to. Thankfully, I'm a recipient of this Jude and Michael E. Toya Scholarship. And I also go to NYU. So the NYU School of Law also has some prestigious scholarships that are administered by the school. Right, the Hauser Global Scholars Program is a fully funded scholarship, which covers your entire tuition, and you also get, I think, monthly stipends for living expenses and accommodation. You also have the Otto T. Vanderbilt Scholarship, also in NYU as well. It covers full tuition. Then you also have the Dean's Graduate Award. It varies, I think, from, let's say, $10,000 to whatever amount that the funding committee decides to give. Then you also have the Tax Program Scholarship. So this just gives us a highlight of the funding opportunities that are available in these schools, right? There are hundreds of schools in the States that offer different programs. So one thing you have to do, as you can see from this point, is you have to really do a lot of research, right? This presentation and the ones you've heard from all other facilitators are limited in scope, right? You have to do the work, research. When you've shortlisted the schools that you are considering for your LLM or whatever graduate degree program you're considering, go to the website. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of research. By the end of the day, it will be worth it. The thing is that for most of us, we suffer for lack of information. And I myself, I'm a victim of it. You don't know what's happening. You keep on relying on one person or reading stuff or reading things that are not reliable, or just really limit your approach. I'm sure many of us follow Sage on social media, on Twitter and LinkedIn. And there's a post that he uploaded recently, I think earlier this year, and said you should spend at least 30 minutes each day researching on opportunities, but financial, scholarships, loans, and fellowships and all that. So while you shortlist the schools that you are interested in, sit down, go to the financial aid section or the scholarship section of the program you're applying to. You will see there the criteria for application. You'll see there the application process. You'll see there the timeline. So this is very, very important. Another funding opportunity that's provided to applicants by host institutions is what we call assistantships. Well, this is more common with applicants in the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It's quite different from a fellowship, or rather, it's quite different from a scholarship or a grant. So an assistantship, you are given most times full tuition waiver, but in exchange for that, you offer some services to the institution. Most likely, you are a teaching assistant or a research assistant to a professor, or you work in the lab, right? So for most host institutions, you have a grant. It varies. Some are fully funded. Some are maybe 50%, 75%. Then you also have the assistantships, which are usually common amongst STEM programs. So still on grants and scholarships, right? Now away from the host institutions to external funding bodies. You have government agencies and private institutions or foundations that also offer opportunities to international students like myself and like every one of us here. Also, those of us from Nigeria in particular. Well, these opportunities that are external are really competitive, right? Because most of them aren't just focused or aren't just specific to particular schools. They are open to applicants or people who are considering different schools around the world. So they are quite competitive. And as I said earlier, some of these external scholarships also require that you show your academic standing, your academic achievement as the basis for you to be awarded the scholarship, or some form of involvement in community service or entrepreneurship or innovation or your career trajectory. While some also require you to show, financial need. Why should we give you this funding, Afam? You should explain to us what is your financial circumstance? How is it different from that of Destiny? So these are the considerations that these external funding bodies look at when applying for, when considering or when reviewing applications. Also, some of these grants are also specific in terms of their scope. Some are only open to people from certain areas. So some are only open to developing countries, to citizens of emerging markets, to people who are from sub-Saharan Africa, to Latinos. Some are only focused on Muslim applicants, some Christians, some also based on your research area, or for those in corporate law, for those in public health, and things like that, right? So I have here on this slide few notable scholarship programs which I am aware of. I know a good number of my friends who are studying here in the States who are beneficiaries of this scholarship. So the first one, for each of them, I also have the links to help us get to really assess what are the criteria, the application process, and timelines for each of these scholarships. So the first is the American Association of University Women International Fellowship Program. Well, as the name suggests, this is specifically for women, and I think it prioritizes women from developing countries. Nigeria is part of it. I have a friend who's in Columbia Law School as well, who's a recipient of this scholarship. Then you have the Black Heart Foundation Scholarship. It's open to applicants or persons who are considering postgraduate degree in the US and also in the UK. So yeah, people who are also considering the UK can also apply to Black Heart Foundation. Then also Fulbright. The Fulbright Foreign Student Program is, of course, I'm sure many of us know, is one of the leading US government-sponsored scholarship opportunities for postgraduate degrees. It's open to both master's and PhD. But my understanding and from my research, for Nigerians, the Fulbright scholarship is only open for those, it's only available to those who are undertaking their doctorate degree programs, that's PhD. We also have MasterCard as well. For MasterCard partners with certain schools in the States. So I'm sure of University of California UC Berkeley and Arizona State University. Then we also have PEO International Peace Scholarship and also the Rotary Foundation Peace Scholarship. These scholarships, but for PEO is only for women. It's only for women. Then for the Rotary Foundation Peace Scholarship, I think it's only, it gives preference to those who have interest, who have experience in peace and conflict resolution. So yeah, please feel free, go to the website. The slides will be made available to all participants to research what it's the selection criteria, application timeline, and things like that. Then on application timeline, right, for the previous one, for funding that has been provided by the host institutions, right? So for most US schools, I'm referring to the LLM program, right? For most US schools, the deadline for application for the admission is really December. I think for Harvard, it's December 1st. For Columbia, it's December 18th, right? So for the funding opportunities that are provided by these institutions, the deadline for your funding application is usually the same day as the deadline for the application. So for Harvard, excuse me. So for Harvard, the deadline is the 1st of December for your application for admission. That same day is also the deadline for your financial aid application. Same too for Columbia, December 18, I believe, or 16, or depending on the exact date this year, right? So let's say it's December 18, for instance, for Columbia. That same day, your deadline for application for admission, that same day as well, the deadline for applying to these wonderful opportunities for financial aid provided by the respective institutions. So away from grants, we now move over to loans. So yeah, we have grants. As I said earlier, grants are the vary in terms of degree. It could be fully funded, it could be partial, 50%, 70%, 30%, right? So a good number of people, right, do not receive full funding. And from my understanding, speaking with friends and colleagues, I believe that applicants in the STEM field have more opportunities for funding. There are more funding in STEM than you have in the social sciences or like law, right? So most schools, as I said, like NYU, have some very few scholarships that give you 100% funding, like the Hausa Global, right? But for most people or most programs, LLM, that are being sponsored by the schools, the funding is special. Either 75%, 80%, 50%, or 60%. So what happens to the shortfall? You have to find a viable means of funding the shortfall, right? So what most people do, some people are lucky, they're blessed, they get 100% funding, covers tuition, living expenses. Some get partial, then they resort to loans in order to provide for their the outstanding sum. And some people sadly do not receive any funding at all, like I did in 2020. As I said, when I got my admission to Columbia Law School, I didn't receive any funding. And I was left with the decision of, oh, do I take a loan of $80,000? Well, it's kind of ridiculous. And I think no one will advise me to make that decision, right? But some people also go down that route by getting a loan to cover the total expense. Well, something just came to mind now, right? While we're researching and outlining the schools that we want to go to, also looking at funding opportunities, I think most of us are carried away, the truth be told. We all love the fact that, yeah, people are in Oxford, yeah, people are in Cambridge, people are in Harvard, people are in Columbia and Yale and the rest of that. But I think we should also consider and also consider importantly, what are the funding opportunities, right? So I know of a top tier university here in the US, right? The LLM program is quite prestigious, one of the most prestigious programs around the world. But sadly, it is written there on the website of the school, the LLM program, that there is no funding. The school doesn't give shishi. And it's quite expensive. It's over $80,000 for the tuition. And I have some colleagues who applied to those schools. I'm sure some of us will know the school, what I applied to the school, right? Yeah. And they got funding. And yeah, sorry, they got admitted. Yeah, you've gotten admitted. And how do you then raise $70,000 or $80,000? Keep writing to the school, but the school has put it there. There's a clear caveat on the website. Oh, we don't offer, this program doesn't have funding. But that's why I said earlier, we really have a lot of research to do, right? When you've chosen the schools that you're interested in, dig deep, sit down, get your pen and paper. Yeah, as you saw Fikayo's outline for her PhD application. quite organized. She said, treat it like a project. So the same thing here, as you're applying for your admission, also applying for funding, get a spreadsheet. Oh, what does Columbia Law School offer? What are the opportunities? What does Stanford offer? What does Yale offer? What does Harvard offer? I think it will help you to make more informed decisions. So now focusing on loans, right? So loans, you can get loans from two main sources, the host institution. Yeah, so some of these universities as well also provide loans. Yeah, Columbia Law School can also give you a loan. Harvard Law School can also give you a loan. Yeah, Yale can also give you a loan, or whichever school you're considering. So in addition to the grants, they also provide loans as well. And these loans are, the terms are pretty lenient. You have a moratorium period, a grace period, before which repayment kicks in, and also the interest rate. And the interest rates are quite minimal or low. So for most schools that I'm aware of, the interest rate is 5%. And the tenor for repayment. So I'm sure, for instance, for Columbia Law School, for most of the loans, I think for all the loans that I know, I'm aware of, the repayment period is 10 years. So yeah, you're done with school 2023, you have a period of 10 years to pay the loan. So apart from the host institutions, right, you also have some private lending institutions that also provide loans as well. And I think it's very important that you also search them out. I also have the website here. So for most, a good number of financial institutions here in the United States, and also those that provide funding loans to international students, a good number of them require co-signers. I mean by co-signers for international students. So a co-signer is more or less like a guarantor, someone who is here in the States, let's say your sibling, a friend, an acquaintance, a family member, who will also co-sign as more or less like a third-party guarantor that you will repay the loan, right? And of course, a good number of us who are international students do not have family members or friends who we can rely on or who want to place their reputation want to place their reputation at stake by being a co-signer to our loan application. So one of the advantages of these two private lenders that I have here on the slide is that they do not require co-signers, and they're quite popular, and their rates are minimal compared to others in the market. The first is Empower. The interest rate is fixed. Then the next is Prodigy. I think the interest rate is fixed, but in some cases it varies. So you submit your application. They usually require you to show, proof of admission. You can upload your I-20, your I-20. Then, also show, you also have to prove your current financial circumstance and why you need the loan. Yeah, more or less like a calculator to show, this is how much I have, this is how much I have in savings and investment, and this is the shortfall. Then it will help the institution to make an informed decision when reviewing your application. And one advice I give to people when considering loans is that you should consider the interest rate, right? So don't just go ahead to Empower. I just have these two here because they're the most popular ones. I'm sure if you go online or if we speak after this session, I could also give you more private lenders. So my advice is that don't just rush for one. Try to see or compare. As I said earlier, have a spreadsheet. What does Empower offer? What is the interest rate? What are the conditions? What does Prodigy offer? What does this other institution offer? I believe it will help you make more informed decision. Yeah, so as I said earlier, my presentation focuses mainly on graduate degree programs, that's the master's. But for PhD, well, I'm not doing a PhD. Thankfully, I'm not Fikayo, and I don't want to be in Fikayo's shoes, yeah. And as Destiny, I said, Destiny is considered.
Afam. Bro. Unprovoked, you know.
Well, we envy you, but I think, I'm not sure I'm ready for a PhD or I want to pursue one at the moment. But yeah, if you're considering a PhD, right? I think my understanding and from research I've done and speaking with people here in the States, most PhDs are fully funded. Yeah, that's my understanding. Most PhDs here in the States are fully funded, even for your doctorate in law, your JSD or whatever it's called. Most of them are fully funded. Usually comes with tuition waivers, and of course you have to. Some also get stipends, monthly stipends that help you with living expenses. Yeah, and in exchange, of course, for the stipends and the tuition waiver, most times after the first 2 years of studies and classes, you have to work either as a teaching assistant or a research assistant, as the case may be. Yeah. So the last slide, right? I have resources that will be helpful for everyone. These websites are very, very, very helpful. They highlight various opportunities for financial aid, scholarships, grants, fellowships, loans, not only for LLMs, of course, open to people in various, we have interest in various areas, public health, economics, finance, development, all different areas. You have Education USA, Nigeria, EduPass, IFA, International Student Organization. Then you have LLM Guide. Of course, as the name suggests, this is only for LLMs, for those in considering a master's in law, Master of Laws. Then you have Unigo. So these resources are quite helpful. The slides made available. They have different funding opportunities. So many, countless. They have the selection criteria, the application timeline, the requirements, and things like that. Right. So before I conclude, right, I think it's also important to note that whatever or whichever funding package you choose, you could have 100% grant, 100% scholarship. You could have partial grant and partial loan, or you could have 100% loan. And also know some people as well who decide to self-fund. Yeah, you could self-fund your program as well if you have enough money. So let's say you have 90% funding from the school, and the 10% left you can self-fund. Great, go ahead. But I also know that some schools here in the States also give you the opportunity to pay in installments. I'm sure of Columbia University, people can pay in installments, either monthly or per quarter. So you divide based on based on the amount that's outstanding, and then you will know how much you have to pay based on your package, either monthly or per quarter. And what I also know is that this payment by installment also attracts interest. But of course, the interest rates are quite minimal. And I know some may also ask, does it also make sense, or can you also fund your program by working, right? I think it's quite tricky. It's quite tricky. Most of these programs are quite intense, and the duration is quite short. So for the LLMs, most LLMs here in the States are just for 9 months. Yeah, and you have a limit as to the number of hours you can work as an international student, right? Yeah, so the maximum hours I can work in a week is 20 hours, right? Yeah, and of course the pay isn't that great, more or less like minimum wage that you get. I think it's not it's impossible. I think it's quite difficult, or yeah, quite difficult to fund your tuition just based on the part-time job you are doing here. I think what most people do is that when you're working part-time, either as a assistant, you're being paid, or working in the library, the side hustle that you do by the side, it helps with living expenses. Yeah, to pay your rent, feeding, clothing, to enjoy and things like that. But for funding the program, which is quite important, yeah, scholarship, you have the grant, you have the fellowship, you have the loan, or a combination of both. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. I wish everyone the best. The slides, the PowerPoint presentation will be shared to every one of us. I'm happy to answer questions and interact with every one of us afterwards. I have my contact details, the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Afam, for such
Oh, sorry.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. Can I answer one or two questions? I can see on there. I can see in the chat room. Can I answer one or two questions?
Yes, you can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So I can see. I can see a question that says, do you have to come back to Nigeria? Yeah, Afam, does one have to come back to Nigeria after the program? Well, I believe this question is in relation to funding, right? I believe it's in relation to funding. So if you get scholarship for a host academic institution, well, to the best of my knowledge, you're not required, or there's no condition that you should come back, or you should go back to your country. But for most external funding bodies, as we all know, for instance, let's say Chevening, that gives you opportunities in the UK, where you're required to go back home, I think for about 2 years, to contribute to the development of your country. Yeah, so for some of the opportunities that are highlighted earlier, so for instance, the American Association of University Women International Fellowship Program, I think one of the conditions is that, of course, being a beneficiary, once you complete your program, go back home and contribute. Yeah, I think that's the same thing too for PEO International Peace Scholarships. So how do you know all this? Of course, going to the website, researching, and also seeing the conditions. I think this will help you in making an informed decision of which applications, of which funding opportunities that you want to subscribe to, apply to, and also accept. So I have some friends who got some of this lovely funding. Yeah, they got accepted, but when they saw the conditions, that you have to go back home, many of them turned them down. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add on that because last year, I remember there were a bunch of people who came to do masters at Oxford on chevening. Yeah. And the thing is, I would just like to explain that some of these scholarship bodies are more strict than others. Like there are some that if you can explain to them that, I finished my master's, I'm now thinking of a PhD because I think PhD is really where I should be. Some of them might let you stay, but chevening, they will find you and they will take you back to Lagos themselves. Like last year, chevening will find you and take you back. So again, if Jackpot is sort of the ultimate goal to not go back to Nigeria, first of all, don't even apply to chevening. Don't think about it. Marshall Scholarship. I don't know if Marshall accepts Nigerians anymore, but don't apply to the Marshall Scholarship. Those two, you are going back, whether you like it or not.
Thank you so much, Fikayo. So yeah, you heard Fikayo. I think it's very important that you take all this into consideration when applying for scholarships or financial aid. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Afam. Do you want to